Hi, my name is Veronika Vitaskova, and I'm a flutist and world woodwind player, and I am a member of Synchron Stage Orchestra. I recorded lots of instruments for Vienna Symphonic Library. They're all ethnic woodwind instruments, so they are like flutes and different woodwind instruments from all over the world. And in the orchestra of Synchron Stage, I recorded in the orchestra for many, many movies, series, commercials, and everything what came into the orchestra. Few of the projects I recorded were, for example, Vivo, Over the Moon, Harry Potter Anniversary, all the Marvel series like WandaVision, Moon Knight, and many, many, many other different projects. There are two movies which I mentioned, Over the Moon and Vivo, and they're both very beautiful in very different ways. So Over the Moon was very emotional. Actually, we saw the movie at the same time as we were recording, and we had lots of beautiful melodies, and we could see the movie, and it was very emotional. So at one place, I cried as well during I was recording. And then the other movie, which is Vivo, and that's like a big, big party where the whole orchestra was here, and we just wanted to dance, so that the Latin American rhythms were amazing. And then I saw the movie, and I wanted to move in my living room as well. So that was really fun. The way how I chose the instrument when I was a small child, it's very, I would say, for a little child, very practical way of thinking. So my father was playing in different bands, in pubs, country music, and he played harmonica and saxophone. And I was 7 or 8, and I was always going with him. It was fun, right? And I saw the drummer always needed to carry the whole drum set, and he had to come 4 or 5 hours before to set the whole thing up, and the guitarists have to carry 1 or 2 guitars. And I thought, this is lots of work. I would like to just come and play. And then I saw the singer, and he just came in the last moment, and the show started. So I thought, like, flutes are nice. Flutes are small, portable. And I was like 6 or 7. So this was the first thought. Yeah, I want to play instrument, but I don't want to carry it. And now I play over 70 different instruments, and sometimes I have to bring them all, and that's now a different story. But I didn't know that time. My very first instrument were the Irish whistles. Actually, this one here. And I played until the age of 12, only by ear. So I didn't know notes. I was just playing what I heard and repeating, and I saw the fingers of other players. And then at the age of 12, I was thinking I want to study, I want to continue doing music. And then I started to play the real flute, the silver one. And then I did the whole education in university. And actually, after I finished the studies, it all met together that I play by ear and improvise a lot, and I have all this classical background from one of the best universities in the world. So that just met in a very nice way now. I really enjoy playing in this hall. The acoustic is wonderful. I can hear myself very well. I can hear the other musicians as well. And I'm really used to it because I play here 2-3 times a week sometimes. So it feels like home. So I know exactly which sound works, which way. And I feel very, very comfortable with this hall. To record the world woodwind instruments for the library was quite challenging for me. I never did something like that with the world woodwinds. And sometimes I learned, not sometimes, every single time I learned something completely new about the instruments, how they work. Even one instrument broke, but it still works, it's okay. No instruments were injured in the process of making. Actually, every month I recorded one kind of group of instruments. So I recorded, for example, the whistles, and the weeks before that, I was just listening to Irish music. I was walking through the city, and I was listening to playlists of different Irish music artists and whistle players to get into mood, to make also the pure sound of the whistle very authentic. And then when I was recording duduk or Indian bansuri or any of these other instruments, I always felt like I'm in India for the 2-3 weeks, until I recorded the samples. And it helped to make the character more clear, because every time is a completely different world with different philosophy, with different cultural background, and somehow you can hear it in the voice of these instruments. And today I brought 3 kinds of instruments with me, and that's the tin whistle, that's duduk, and that's the Chinese dizi. So this is the Irish tin whistle. It's called tin whistle or penny whistle. tin whistle because it's made of tin, brass, but it's also made of very different materials. I think I have here also a little bit of nickel or silver. And there are also wooden whistles. Depends what you like, which sound you like. I really enjoy these instruments. And I can also tune it well because I can put this part away. So it's quite nice tunable if I need 440 or 443, depends where I play or the orchestra plays. And they're also called penny whistle, since they costed a penny. This one didn't. But in the old times, they were really kind of cheap, random instruments with different qualities, and they're just played in pubs and being improvised. And mostly they're quite loud, so they are on the top when you play an Irish session, Irish jam session. They're always on the top of all players, so you can always hear it very clearly. The Irish whistle has every single time only 6 holes, right? And so it's very easy to play a diatonic scale. Or the closest to that one. I didn't record only long notes and short notes and the connection between all the notes. I did also the kind of Irish ornamentation, the cuts, rolls, and things like that. So this is an example, for example, here, one. Then I recorded different kinds of vibratos. So you can use different sections, so it sounds very, very Irish. I feel very close to this instrument because it's my very first instrument, as I said before. It feels like my voice. I don't really have to think about the fingers. It just, maybe that's the reason it's easy for me to play all these different instruments, because this was my very first one. And Irish music or Scottish music, you play always very, very fast. And I was small and no one told me it's difficult, so I just played fast. They played fast, so I played with them, and it really paid off for later when I needed to play fast, and I feel really relaxed with my fingers, and that really helped. So this is I cannot say favorite, but it's one of my most closest instruments. In the film music, soundtrack music, or how we call it, the tin whistle was used many, many times. For example, let's think of one movie, like for The Lord of the Rings, there's a very famous melody for this whistle. This is the Chinese bamboo flute called dizi. It has also 6 holes as the Irish whistle, and it also plays in a diatonic scale. But the sound is very, very different because of this hole, which you cover with a dimo, with a really soft paper from a bamboo, and that helps that the tone resonates like on a kazoo. I can show you. It sounds like this. There's always some poem on this part of the bamboo flute, and about mountains and love and things like that. So, and it's in Old Chinese, so nowadays no one can read it, only the people which can understand the Old Chinese. I really enjoy this instrument, which I ordered directly from China, from a great maker. And I recorded this dizi and the bass dizi, which looks like this. So it's even bigger. For me, it's not so difficult to play all these different instruments, because from the early age I learned to play like this. So my fingers, I think it's called fiddle grip. So I can, depends how big the instrument is, I can change the position of my fingers like this, which especially I need with the Indian flutes, which are really huge. And if I would have this holding as on the normal flute, it would be impossible sometimes to reach it, and you would get a cramp. So this is, you have to get used to it, but then it works through all the instruments you play. When you play this instrument, and because of this demo and this vibration, it's always very energetic. And when we think about movies where it was used, maybe one of the most famous melodies are from Kung Fu Panda. I can play a short example. And of course, again, when you play as a musician in a concert, it's nice to take the dizzy in the right key. What's important to know, it's some kind of connections in glissandi are easier than the others, or when you go over the octave. But that's with all flutes. And you want to make a gliss over the octave, it's difficult because then you change the air steam, and it always makes a little break. Like on the violin, you want to make glissando from down until up, and you want to go over a string. That's impossible. You cannot gliss up and then somehow change the string without noticing it. So that's kind of very similar with the flutes. With dizzy, I recorded short and long notes, and also, for example, the frullato, which goes like. So this technique I used on I think almost every recording which I did. I did also a version with frullati. If you use this instrument and then you use also the frullato, it makes it even more special, I would say. The movement from one tone to another is sometimes in this music not only, but you do something in between. And that's also, I recorded some samples of that. And things like that. So it doesn't sound like a robot, so it sounds like a real instrument, real person playing it. So the last instrument I brought today here, it's duduk. You for sure heard the sound before, but maybe you don't know how it looks. It's a beautiful, beautiful instrument. I have to say it's one of my most favorite. It's an Armenian folk instrument. It's played in ensembles, and you can tell lots of emotions with this instrument. When I play it, I hear hope and sadness and a mixture of these two emotions. And sometimes it's a little bit more like there's some hope and there's no hope at all, and I can feel it in the music. And in the film music, you can use it wonderfully. It was used in the movie Gladiator, also the newest one in the Dune, or in Avatar. There was also in many other movies. It has a reed, double reed, which is like this. It's called gamish. And they're also very difficult to get because it's from this special wood, and the best ones are only in Armenia. There are also some Turkish makers, but I'm really happy with this instrument and reeds. So instrument is important, but the reed is even more important, I would say. The wood from which is it made, it's apricot wood. It's a very, very hard wood which grows in the area of Armenia, and it's very thick wood, what helps the sound to be very nice. So when you make it from a very different wood, it's not so thick, and the sound is a little bit different. It was a huge challenge to record this instrument for me because of the reed, and you need lots of pressure, air pressure, the right pressure. I would say that was the most challenging instrument to record for me. I did this one and the bass duduk was a really extraordinary instrument because duduk sounds already very low, although it looks quite small, and the low duduk sounds even lower. Duduk is the closest instrument to a human voice. Because of the technique how you play, you can make this glissandi and kind of crying sound. So it's very close to a human voice, also in the pitch. And from Armenia, it belongs to the World Cultural Heritage of UNESCO, because it's the only place in the world where people play this instrument, and it's so breathtaking and unforgettable, I have to say. You play it with the cheeks blown up. It looks like I'm working a lot that I'm playing it, but that's the right technique to play it. I was discussing with plenty of players, but the Armenian players, so I've always tried to go and find the people of the origin and to ask them. It's always played with the blown up cheeks because the sound gets even more warm and round, and that's exactly what we want from the sound of this instrument. Otherwise, it sounds like a little bit like a clarinet or a bow, and we don't want that. We want very special sound. And now I try to play the famous melody from Gladiator. The reed of this instrument, gamish, it's very moody, I would say. When you play it for longer than 7-8 minutes, the pitch changed immediately. So when you have a player, the player needs to have many reeds, and he needs to change between them. So it's nice to play it, but or when you play higher notes, sometimes during you play you have to tune it a little bit, and at the same time you cannot just hold the note. Sometimes it goes down or up, and then you have to cover so you stay in the pitch. So it's lots of work in progress. All the time you have to adjust, because it's, of course, it's not a classical instrument. It's every time very, very different. And it also depends on the humidity and of the hall where you play, and the place and the continent you are. If it's wet, more the humidity is bigger or smaller. Everything behaves here. It's very... So the way how it sounds, very emotional, it's also picking everything up all the time. I love to record here, duduk, because the acoustic is very, very nice. I hear back the sound at the same time, and it feels just very open and relaxed. And yeah, like when I play here, the sound goes into every single corner of this room and back at the same time. So I feel really I can just play. And the sound projects very nicely. If you play a duduk in an ensemble, then there's a drone note which the player plays, or more players, or one player with the circular breathing, and then the other one improvises, and then they switch places. So it's not so often played alone, but in the film music you can use it with strings and a little bit singing, and then you have this mood here. For duduk, it was a challenge to record and really fun. And I did all kind of ornamentations as well, and all kind of vibrato, because there's this very typical vibrato which you can make with your cheeks. Yeah, so that's something very special, what's maybe with different instruments that don't have this feature. And I recorded this kind of vibrato and also the normal vibrato which you make with diaphragm. The interesting thing is also it has 8 holes here, 1 hole in the behind, and even 1 more here. And there are like few positions when you hold like this, but then you cannot reach the low notes. So then you just switch, and then you can reach down and switch back and switch. And there's 1 more here. So when you close all holes and play the lowest note, then you can go. There's 1 more here. So also when you're composing for someone who should play this instrument, he should know that.